forget your love for me, and yet my heart forever is wandering. Jesus, be my guide and hold me to your side. I will love you to the end. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path.
Oh, I appreciate that Israeli music this morning. Didn't they do great? I thought I was in Israel. Yeah. Well, let's look to the Lord in prayer, asking Him to bless offerings and use it for His glory. Trust the Lord to lift and meet all of our needs. Brother Jack, you're supposed to pray this morning, but you'll have to pray tonight. You do? We'll get you a bonus. Brother Jack.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for these and the many blessings you bestowed upon us. Lord, we thank you for each and every one that's here tonight. Lord, we thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Bless you.
Lord, we thank you for all the Jubilee this week coming. We pray that the music will be great, the preaching will be great.
Yeah.
I pray, Lord, for all the 72 people that are on the prayer list, for our prayer hour. Lord, we thank you for all that you've done for us in the past, and we know you're going to take care of Jubilee this year. Thank you for all these things, and we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
For saving me, and I always pray for the Lord to touch me and to give me the song that He would have me to sing. And I prayed for something to lead us into Jubilee, and with what the preacher had preached on this morning with Thy Kingdom Come. And I just hope this is a blessing to you, this old hymn, How Great Thou Art.
Thy hands have made.
to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And when I think that God his Son not sparing sent him to die, I scarce can take it in that on the cross my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art, how great thou art, how great thou art.
Thank you, Lisa. She lives in Virginia, works at the technical school, and comes here and worships with us every chance she gets. And that humbles me. I mean, when some don't want to drive across the street and they come all the way down. That's Cameron's mom, by the way. What do we do? How does it work? Is it where God has revealed it to us that we can connect the dots, that we can see how the pieces fit together? Well, that's the life of Christ. It's a model. We talked about the model prayer this morning. And that's not his prayer. His prayer is in John 17. This is how he told us to pray. Take your Bibles to Mark, the 2nd chapter. And I want you to note with me a passage. And I have got a feeling I don't have a horse. Hey, I got a pack of M&Ms. I wonder who put those there. But here we go. We got one coming. That's usually main thing I do is get me a Halls or eucalyptus. It kind of helps, but I've been kind of scratchy in the throat. But okay, that'll fix me up. I want you to note with me, as we think about Jubilee, there's an insight in Mark chapter 2 that will help us. I want you to follow with me for a moment, and we're gonna see a few stopping places. But we find, hit the wrong button. And again, he entered into Capernaum. This is one of my favorite spots. If you've been to Israel with us, or if you've been to Israel, you know that Capernaum it's recognized today, a little fishing village where Peter lived. And it's picturesque. It's right at the top of the Sea of Galilee, and the current location is recognized as being Capernaum. And then somebody help me with my geography. The Way to the Sea Road. Those of you who did study this, and I just left me. But anyway, the mile marker is right there. I mean, right there at the top, right behind the synagogue. That's there, Capernaum. It's a Roman mile marker. That's where the road would have been if you had been to Damascus. I mean, coming back into Israel, you'd have gone by Capernaum and then on over by Megiddo, and then you would have gone through a pass, and then you'd have been on the coastal highway, which is where the Rose of Sharon grew, the Sharon Plain, but it's really picturesque, and they have a replica, not of the synagogue in Jesus' day, but you can see the floor. It's built right on top of the site where that synagogue was located. So they're here in this little village. I think that they projected the population probably might have been 300. Wasn't a big place. And here's what's happening. And he says, and again he entered into Capernaum, and after some days, and it was noised that he was in the house. Whose house? I don't know that we got a lot of evidence on that. People speculate. I don't know that it was Peter's house. But he's in the house. He's holding a meeting. And then if you look with me in verse 2, we see in verse 2, and straightway many were gathered together, insomuch that there was no room to receive them. No, not so much as about the door. And he preached a word unto them. Be great to have that Jubilee, wouldn't it? I mean, you got them in the church, you got them outside in the entranceway, you got them, if the house had windows, you got them in the windows. I mean, the place is packed. And then if you look with me in verse 3, and they come unto him, bringing one sick of the palsy, which was born of 4. Could have been 4 ushers. Could have been 4 friends. Could have been 4 neighbors. Could have been 4 family members. Here's a man that's sick. Can't walk. And because they had heard about Jesus, noised abroad, that was the talk of the town. Jesus is in that house. And he was preaching the word. And these 4, we'd have to conclude these 4 were concerned. They had a burden. For this friend, family member, doesn't matter how you identify it, but they had a burden for him. And you know, that's a good starting place, isn't it? I mean, when's the last time we felt the burden for somebody? I know we did the other Sunday when we prayed for say it, Kent, how, wow, whoa, ho, wah. Starts with an H, but you pronounce it with a W. Wah. I got to remember that. And she may be watching. She's with the tumor. I know you had to have felt a burden for her, didn't you? And then we got others in the church family that are going through sickness. Bryson Daniel's about to have this surgery on both elbows again, and Mary was talking about that this morning, and possibility when they get there and they do a full body scan that there may be some other areas that have grown since he was last there that they may need to deal with. But when you got a child suffering, all of us identify there. And then that burden that Brother Eddie felt today when he went up to the hospital, and we got an email from, is it Tasha Morrison, that her uncle was terminally ill, wasn't given but days to live. And Brother Eddie goes up, and God used him to lead her uncle to the Lord. Amen. He got saved. How many in the family got saved, Eddie? 6 more. That's 7. Got saved. He went outside. There was a group standing around in the parking lot. One had left when he went in to talk to Mr. Callahan, and Eddie goes over and talks to them, and the whole group got saved. Amen. I mean, that's God working, isn't it? Amen. So whoever said that soul winning was over? You see, most people have not heard. People who hear first time get saved quick. That's what blesses me about these Chinese. They come in, they grew up in an atheistic society. They were taught by a mouth there was no God. And then they have family members die, and they don't know they'll ever see them again. And then they hear the gospel, and they receive it. And yet we have people who've grown up in church that kind of put the hand up. It's amazing. Well, that's verse 3. Look in verse 4. I think I can make this work. Verse 4, and when they, look this now, and when they could not come nigh unto him for the press, that's the crowd, they quit and went home. They got their feelings hurt, and they did the Baptist thing and said, I'm going home. One day in heaven, when God plays our life, we may come to a realization that when we had our little pout and walked away, that we left some friends or family members with something worse than the palsy who might have gotten saved. That's right. But because of our tender feelings, it's so easy in the modern day to quit on God. And hey, it's not about you and it's not about me. It's about him. And he is the one who is the deliverer. But look what happens. They could not come in because of the crowd. They uncovered the roof where he was. Can you imagine? Now, much of this is either thatch or tile. Chances are in that day in this fishing village, I kind of got a feeling it might have just been thatch. But we in trips to Mexico, because they still in some of our villages, Jorge, one of our pastors in Tyria, we went into his village with our Good Samaritan, we're going to help you out attitude. And we took the thatch roof off of Jorge's house and nailed a tin roof on it. Some of you were there. When did you go on that trip? Jack, you were there, weren't you? You know, Jack sat on the bus. That was a trip we made when somebody, Jorge had a hog. That hog was that big, long. And one of our men went to the outhouse, and it was concrete block and hot. This is in the tropics down there. Hot. And the old sow come and laid down in front of the door and trapped him in the outhouse. Bench office, who it was. And he's scared to upset that hog. He thought the hog might attack him. The man spent the whole afternoon. Where is he? You scared to holler, but that hog trapped him. But think about it for a moment. We took the roof off of Jorge's house, put that tin on. Oh, the next half year, 6 months later, we had a board meeting and was there and met with the pastors, and Jorge began talking to us, and then he began to cry. And I couldn't figure what was wrong. And finally he told us. He wanted to know, would we please let him take that tin off of his house, because these good Horry County boys sealed that roof airtight. It wasn't going to leak. And Jorge said it got so hot in that house through the middle of the day, he couldn't even lay his hand on the bed for his siesta. And he didn't want to offend. But he said, can I please take the tin off and put my thatch back on the roof? Well, we learned handling thatch. It's got a lot of dirt in it, dust. So picture this, that breaking that roof up, that taking it apart. Doesn't matter what it is, it's going to fall down on the crowd. Can't you imagine some of the whining and pining that went on in that room when, those who had front row seats, dirt began to fall down their collar and their neck and their hair and so forth. But they didn't let that stop them. I mean, can't you imagine somebody's hollering, hey, get them people off the roof. But look with me just a little bit more here now. He goes on, and when they had broken it up, they let down the bed wherein the sick of the palsy lay. They didn't quit till they got their family member, friend, whoever he was, in the very presence of the Lord Jesus Christ. I think I can say pretty comfortably, I expect the Lord to be here during Jubilee. Wouldn't that be a good time to bring those who have need, whether it's a sick body or a sick soul, to get them in the presence? But sometimes it doesn't take much to discourage us. But these four didn't let it stop them. You see that in the lesson? Amen. 4 men brought him. I believe all 4 got the same reward. Everybody had a role. Everybody had a part. And then if you'll look with me a little bit more, something else begins to happen. Verse 5 says, when Jesus saw there, what's this word? Faith. That's what Eddie talked about tonight. About faith. Faith to even put out a prayer request. Faith that led Brother Eddie and Jerry down to the hospital. Faith. And it's going to take faith this year for Jubilee. You got your list? My home church, my daddy told this. They're having a revival, and you'd have to know my community. There were 4 roads. You had Sardis Highway, you had Cartersville Highway, then you had Lynch's River Road, and then you had also Cusack's Crossroads Road. So we had more, but the main ones were the 4, and then the spurs off of it. And what they had done in the past was a deacon took a road and went house to house and invited people to revivals. Now, back in the day, you could do that. I mean, today it'd be kind of hard. You can't even get into some homeowner associations to get on your street. Back then they did. Well, I had a deacons meeting, and they brought this up, that they needed to promote the revival and have a deacon take a road. And Daddy said one of the deacons spoke up and said, well, don't give me Cartersville Road. I had it last year and went to every house and nobody came. And then one of the men said, well, we can just let them go to hell then. Sometimes we give up on people too soon.
Amen.
Aren't you glad nobody gave up on you?
Amen.
And don't you imagine this man sick with the palsy was glad the four didn't give up on him?
Amen.
Hey, it'd been tough for 3 men to tote him up on that roof. It'd have been even tougher for 2 men to have carried him up on the roof. It'd have been all but impossible for 1 man to do it and let him down through the roof. It took all 4. And so sometimes we need to tag team. We need to pray together. We need to work together. I believe that's the kind of Jubilee we're going to have this year. I mean, going back to all the flood relief and how people roll up their sleeves and work together and how people have been praying and the salvations today, I believe God's working. And I believe that we've got the same kind of conviction that these men had. The soul, this man, the soul, I'm going to explain that in a moment, the soul was worth the effort. Now, look a little bit more. That's verse 6. But there were certain of the scribes sitting there and reasoning in their hearts. Look what they do. Why doth this man thus speak blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God only? Got to back up, I missed something. They laid him, look, and when they could not come nigh, they uncovered the roof, and they let the man who was sick down, sick of the palsy, now 5. And when Jesus saw their faith, look what he says. He said unto the sick of the palsy, son, thy what? Sins be forgiven thee. And I didn't get to the B part a while ago. Well, there's always Satan's always got somebody. And here we see who they are. The scribes. I mean, they're the religious leaders. Did they have a burden for the man sick? No. They wasn't carrying him. But they had a problem that God healed him. And so here you see there were certain of the scribes sitting there and reasoning in their heart, and that's a bad thing to ever have happen. You start reasoning. Why doth this man speak blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God only? Look what Jesus does in verse 8. And immediately when Jesus perceived in his spirit that they so reasoned within themselves, he said unto them, why reason ye these things in your heart? I've met some. Oh, they didn't have on the scribe's attire, but they went in the services and God moved and souls were saved. And at the end of the service, they'd come out and pick on something that had nothing to do with a man's salvation. You see, during Jubilee, you're going to hear things different. That's right. You're going to hear some music, maybe a little bit loud. We try to keep that under control. You may have somebody sitting in your seat. But if we all don't come with the same passion that these 4 men had who brought this friend to Jesus, I guarantee you they're celebrating. And when the Lord, he pins them, but he doesn't quit there. Look what he does next. Verse 9, look what he said. Whether it is easier to say to the sick of the palsy, thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, arise and take up thy bed and walk. Now the latter is a demonstration of his power to heal. The salvation of a soul is a picture of his power to transform a person from the inside out. Which is greater. His point is, it's more important to save the soul than the body. But they were occupied on what he did. And then if you'll look with me, in verse 10 he says, but that ye may know, look at this now, but that ye may know that the Son of Man hath power on earth to forgive sins. He saith to the sick of the palsy, I say unto thee, arise and take up thy bed and go thy way into thine house. Amen. Wow. Did he do that? He did. He did it again today. Every soul that cried out to him for salvation, he saved them. And the saving of the soul is much better than the healing of the body. Because the body's still got to perish. It can't go up. We got to have a new one. Now, look what happens next. This is what we want now. Look at this, verse 12. Look at this with me. And immediately he arose, took up the bed, and went forth before them all, insomuch that they were all amazed and glorified God, saying, we never saw it on this fashion. Wouldn't it be good if that were our testimony this week of what God did? Now, I'm satisfied that God's going to do his part. Don't you? When I'm dissatisfied, God's going to do his part. If we'll do our best to fill these pews, I believe God will do his part to meet the needs of everybody present. I believe he will. But see, our faith is tested. Don't you think these 4 men who brought the man to the Lord and brought him and went through the roof and so, didn't they have a great faith? That's what he said. So great a faith. I mean, faith to claim it and faith to believe it. And so it could be, we never saw it on this fashion. Or it can be the same old, same old. The gospel never loses its power. Amen. Never loses it. If there's a variable, it's not on God's end. It's on our end. And I believe God does for us what we believe him for. I got a feeling that man wasn't the only one sick in that village. But he was the only one that had 4 who cared enough about him to bring him. Cared enough to bring him. In this upside down world we live in, and we got families in trouble. We've got everything you can almost imagine taking place. And that means there are a lot of hurting people around us. And what they really need is a touch from heaven. So we can become one who can leave here and we can say, I never saw it like this before. Never saw it this way before. And you know, God never does the same thing the same way every time. That's right. And he may show us some things we've never seen. We may even have some of these old mountain boys come down here and take a lap. Yeah. Most time people say, what's wrong with him? Yeah. Well, maybe he got a touch we didn't. Maybe he got a touch we didn't. But it just depends on how receptive we are, how open we are. I do encourage you. A lot of words doesn't impress God. It's not by how much we say. It's what we say and mean, and what we say by faith, believing God for it. Now, to pray over all the speakers and musicians and the 30-some missionaries. Can you imagine that? 30-some missionaries. And trust God to use us. I hope that you'll treat these missionaries like a special guest. And they may bring some families. How big's your family that you got coming?
Husband, wife, and 6 kids.
Husband, wife, that's 8. They'll take up your pew. You come in here in that crowd that's got your pew. Listen. Everybody's a VIP in God's kingdom.
That's right.
And we need to be ambassadors for Christ. I put that on the screen earlier. We as rep. We're who people meet. We're the front line of heaven. And so I hope that we'll tarry around the foot of the cross and put our petitions before the Lord and trust God to meet them and bless and help us. Now, before we have prayer, I learned on the way home today that Juliana Penda died about 10:30 this morning. So pray for Brother Willie. That means Brother Joel and his wife's expectant. Didn't even know if he could be, how much Jubilee he could do, their first child. And to make arrangements to get to Spanish Wells, you have to fly usually to Miami or Fort Lauderdale, and then you can fly into North Eleuthera, and then you got to take a boat over to Spanish Wells. They don't have a funeral home on the island, at least they didn't last time I was there. So they don't embalm. You go to the hardware store to pick out the casket, and it's wood most times. They may have changed it somewhat. So Juliana's burial on the island is probably going to have to be tomorrow or no later than Tuesday. So pray for Brother Willie. I have been there. In fact, I was speaking at the People's Church. Family in the church had twins. One of them died about 4 years old, I think. And I was asked to have the funeral. And I'll never forget that. That's how I'm familiar with the funeral context, how they do it. So we ask you to pray for Willie, pray for Joel, pray for the family. And I had hoped, and sometimes our hoping and good intentions don't always work the way we would like. But I'd hoped to have seen Juliana before she passed, but pray for them. And then pray for Joanne. Brownie Bazard passed away. And yes, he did. And then there are other needs here. I know Brother Jack said he felt better tonight. We want Jack just to get well, just get delivered. And then I got a meeting tomorrow about the house. I'm consulting another opinion. The insurance company, all the paperwork was submitted 2 weeks ago at least, waiting to hear. And then last week we learned that the man with the insurance company handling the claim had left the company. And so now they've given it somebody new. And they got to be brought up to speed on where we are. And so we just need some help. And it's in God's hands. Romans 8:28 is as real for me as it is for you. All things work together for good for those that love God, called according to his purpose. When you think you're at the end of the journey, you think this is it. And then you get a bump in the road. But we can't let that bother us enough to hinder our prayer life. Or as one of these men bringing their friend, you can't let circumstance stop you. And that burden you've got for somebody in your family, this may be the week they get saved. We're praying that way. Anybody with special requests tonight, a burden on your heart that we don't have on the prayer sheet or we've not shared, and you'd like to share it? If so, would you slip your hand up wherever you are? Yes, brother. Spoken or unspoken? Spoken or unspoken?
Oh, I'll tell it.
Okay.
I'm having trouble in my back. It's bothering me really bad.
Okay.
And I'm sitting here all tensed up right now.
Okay.
And I just want y'all to pray for me so that it'll loosen up a little bit.
Okay.
Here, that way I can come every night.
Amen. Well, maybe before you can pick him up in prayer. Just lift him up. Yes, Brother Mike.
We have 6 children, and our 4 oldest ones are not saved. Only the 2 youngest are saved. Pray for them.
You've heard Brother Mike's heart. Pray for them. Any others tonight? Yes, John. Unspoken. Any other unspoken? Got some unspokens. Yeah, we got several unspoken. Yes. I do, and Ellen talked to not Jeff, Nick, and they did do the procedure. I think that I first heard it was kind of gloom and doom, but Nick led Ellen to believe that they got some issues, but it's treatable, and I don't think it was as spread as I first heard. But she has cancer, and Nick and Margie were here in the church. He moved to Santee, and then they moved back. They're over on the other side of the county. So I don't think we got Margie on the prayer list, but we need to. She's to start treatment, I think, pretty soon. Yes.
Walter and Shirley Butler would like us to remember their son Ryan.
Okay. Okay. Pray for Walter, Shirley's son, Ryan. Any others tonight? Yes, Joyce.
My sister, Bernice,
Uh-huh.
has Wagner's vasculitis, but it affects the whole body, everything. And she had pneumonia, and they had to give her a real strong antibiotic to get her over it. And now she has to be on this the rest of her life, because if she gets the pneumonia back again, it'll take her life.
Okay.
She won't be able to do it. So just
Yeah.
pray that she doesn't get the
Get-
pneumonia back.
Pray for Joyce's sister not to get any complications involving pneumonia. Yes, Brother Jerry? Pray for Marge. Any others? I do see Joanne's hand. I didn't see it at first.
Like in Richard Cashmere, they have found a flashlight and in the port since they're dealing with cancer.
Bless her heart. Okay, pray for Frenchie, yes. Any others? Yes, Brother Charles.
My sister just was in the hospital for heart operation, and she's had a mini stroke yesterday.
Okay.
That's a sign that the big coming.
Well, we'll trust not.
We never know.
Yeah, we'll trust not. Yes, Brother Kent.
Russell Gibson, 1 o'clock on Monday, is going for a doctor's appointment for evaluation on possibly a nodule that may require an operation.
Okay.
For that to be something simple that the Lord will get him fixed up back here quickly.
Pray for us. All right. Come on up here. He made it back tonight. This young man did something this morning, and he asked the Lord in his heart, told me in the foyer. And he's local from Green Sea. Grew up on a farm over there, so he got to be a good boy. And now he's in the Lord's labor. And you making this a public profession tonight, Brother Eddie? You talk to him. He's doing that. So if you rejoice in his decision,
he's willing to tell you to.
hey, well, tell us.
Yes, I gave my life to the Lord today, and I had a lot on my heart, and I was dealing with a lot. And after I talked to the Lord and gave him my life, it seemed like a lot of weight was lifted.
Amen. Yes, sir. He does that. Amen. So we thank you. You go to the foyer, and we're going to speak to you out there and give you a hand of fellowship. And again, I hope that we can share with you the decisions on the Chinese lady. And there was one other that I got to follow up on that I believe was saved this morning in the service. And let's just pray during Jubilee heaven will just come down.
Amen.
and glory will fill our souls. Let's stand together as we're dismissed tonight. We thank you for you being here, and trust the Lord to bless us as we leave and keep his hand on us and his hand of mercy and grace. Brother Kent, dismiss us, please.
You brought us together tonight in anticipation of what we hope will be an awesome week of jubilee, of praise, of giving thanks, of uplifting hearts with music and message, of seeing people come to you, Lord, to give their lives, and for this to be the church that's got the light on the hill, the welcoming place where people feel not only welcome, but feel your presence, Lord. And we know that you'll be here with us, that you'll give us all strength and encouragement to share your good news and to just make this an exciting week, Lord, all giving you thanks and praise. And we ask all this in your precious Son's name. Amen.